My sister didn't even wait for the candles. She stood up at Grandma's birthday dinner, lifted her glass and announced, "This family is honestly embarrassed to have you share our name." 30 relatives froze. Mom nodded. Dad curled his lips, proud of her for saying what they never dared to. I didn't lash out. I didn't cry. I just sat there beneath the string lights, the quiet one they thought would stay quiet forever. But before anyone could take another bite, Grandma pushed back her chair and rose to her feet, and what she said next didn't just silence the table. It changed everything. My name is Lillian Harper, and if there's one thing I learned early, it's how to swallow disappointment without letting it show on my face. In some families, being the oldest means you're the steady one, the reliable one. In mine, it meant standing just far enough behind my younger sister Ariana so the spotlight could hit her cleanly every single time. Ariana is 2 years younger than me, my sister, my mirror opposite. Where I grew into quiet focus, she grew into applause. She had this effortless way of making adults lean in, laugh louder, brag on her behalf. Our parents, Jennifer and Richard, treated her like some walking prophecy. She's going to take the Harper legacy to the next level, they'd say. They never said that about me, not once. I didn't resent her at first. I just faded. I still remember being 11, clutching the results of a statewide math competition. Dad skimmed the paper for less than a second before turning to Ariana, who was showing him how she'd taped glitter to her sneakers. He told her she was creative. He told me not to brag. That was the rhythm of our household. She dazzled, I delivered. She sparkled, I stabilized. The only person who broke that rhythm was my grandmother, Evelyn. To everyone else, she was the founder of our family business, the woman whose name still hung on office plaques. But to me, she was the one who'd sit beside me on the porch steps and ask real questions about what I wanted, how I thought, where my instincts led me. She raised Ariana and me with the same resources, but she saw through the gloss. She knew what substance looked like. And then there was my cousin Haley, 2 years younger than Ariana. She didn't grow up inside the bubble. She grew up just close enough to hear the cracks. From middle school onward, whenever a family gathering went wrong, she'd quietly drift toward me afterward and whisper, "You saw that too, right?" Haley became my unofficial witness of favoritism, of tiny humiliations, of the way Ariana's voice always seemed to drown out mine. By the time I went off to college, I'd perfected the art of being the dependable background character. I took scholarships, worked night shifts, paid my own bills. I entered the finance world because numbers didn't interrupt me or talk over me. They just told the truth. And I built a life in Charlotte far away from Harper expectations. But distance doesn't erase patterns. Every holiday, every gathering, every call home turned into an accidental stage for Ariana. One day, when I'm running the company, she'd say as if it were hereditary. Mom encouraged it, Dad echoed it, and I learned to let their certainty wash over me without reacting. 6 weeks before Grandma's birthday, the invitations went out. A simple cream card for me. A full photo shoot announcement for Ariana captioned Future CEO Era. Family members flooded her comments. Mine ignored, same as always. Then Mom sent a text that snapped something small but important inside me. Please behave at the party. As if existing quietly wasn't something I'd already mastered. 6 weeks before Grandma's birthday, the entire Harper family seemed to shift into performance mode. The group chat that usually sat silent for months suddenly lit up like a switchboard. Cousins I barely remembered started posting throwback photos with grandma aunts, coordinated potluck dishes as if they were planning a state banquet, and right in the center of it all, Ariana. She uploaded a picture of herself standing in the lobby of the family business headquarters, one hand on her hip, the other resting on the railing like she owned the building. Her caption read, "Stepping into the future." Under it, heart emojis, clap emojis, comments from relatives calling her our rising leader. I read every comment like someone watching a parade through a window they weren't invited to stand at. My invitation had arrived on the same day, but mine wasn't posted online with a photo shoot. Mine came quietly handwritten by Grandma, slipped into a cream envelope. I saved it, not for the event itself, but for the part where she wrote, "It would mean a lot if you came." 2 days later, Mom's message arrived. Cold, practical. Please behave at the party. as if she expected me to show up wearing chaos like perfume. I typed, "Of course," and set my phone down. But something sat heavily in my chest afterward, a slow, smoldering pressure I hadn't felt in years. Around that time, Haley called. She rarely opened with small talk, and that night she skipped it entirely. "You've seen the way the family's acting, right?" I told her I had. "Well," she continued, lowering her voice, "Ariana's been telling everyone she already knows what Grandma plans to announce at the party." I froze. "What announcement?" "That's the thing Haley said. She's acting like she's already been crowned. She's picking out new office decor. She's even saying Grandma hinted at handing her control soon." Ariana had been rehearsing her Queen Bee era for years, but hearing it escalate like this hit differently. "And there's more," Haley added. "I've been helping Grandma clear out some old paperwork." There were documents from her attorney, multiple visits in the last few weeks. "About the business?" I asked. Haley hesitated. "I can't say for sure. She didn't let me see the details. But Lillian, something is happening." Grandma had built everything from nothing. She was sharp, shrewd, and still fully capable of making decisions, but she was also guarded, especially where the business was concerned. Ariana assuming she already knew the outcome that was a new level of entitlement. Still, it was Ariana. She lived in a permanent state of premature celebration. As the party approached, tension built inside me in small, invisible ways, the way relatives asked me if I was doing okay with a tone that suggested they already knew I wouldn't like what was coming. The way Dad mentioned offhandedly, "This birthday will be special," with a proud glance toward Ariana. The way Mom reminded me twice in the same week to look presentable. By the time the day finally arrived, something in my chest felt taut, like a string pulled so tight one more tug might snap it. And as I parked near Grandma's house that evening, watching Ariana pose for photos at the entrance, as if she were hosting the event, that string pulled just a little tighter. By the time I stepped into Grandma Evelyn's backyard that evening, the celebration had already taken on the flavor of a coronation. White lanterns floated above the tables. The smell of grilled vegetables and rosemary chicken drifted through the air. Laughter rose in waves, too loud, too bright, all circling around one person. Ariana, she floated from group to group, greeting relatives with air kisses, tossing her hair, just enough to catch the lights. Every time someone said future legacy or next in line, she beamed like she'd rehearsed the moment. Dad walked 2 steps behind her, proud and easy, while Mom adjusted Ariana's necklace like she was sending her out on stage. And me, I slipped quietly into a seat at the far end of the long table. I wasn't avoiding them. I was giving them exactly what they'd trained me to be: background noise. Dinner started with clinks of silverware and soft conversation, the kind that feels polite enough to hide the undercurrent beneath it. I answered questions if someone asked. If they didn't, I let myself fade. It was easier than fighting for a voice no one wanted to hear. When dessert arrived, Grandma's favorite lemon cake, someone dimmed the lights and relatives gathered around to sing. Ariana stood near the head of the table, positioning herself directly beside Grandma, as though she belonged there more than anyone else. The singing ended. The candles flickered. Grandma smiled in the gentle way she always did. And that's when it happened. Ariana lifted her glass. Her smile sharpened into something that glittered cold under the lights. "Before Grandma makes her big announcement tonight," she said, "I just want to say something to the family." My stomach tightened. She turned to me, eyes narrowing with that sweet, polished cruelty she'd perfected over the years. "This family," she said, voice steady and loud enough for every forks and knife to freeze, "is honestly embarrassed to have you share the Harper name." A soft, stunned silence rippled across the table. Mom nodded, not hesitantly, confidently, like she'd been waiting for someone to finally say it out loud. Dad curled his lips into that familiar expression he used whenever he agreed, but didn't want to speak the agreement himself. For a moment, the world narrowed to the clink of ice in nearby glasses, the smell of lemon frosting the burn behind my eyes. I lifted my wine more for something solid to hold than anything else. I didn't respond. I didn't flinch. I just sat there beneath the string lights, letting the humiliation settle into my chest, like a weight I'd carried my whole life. But something inside me shifted quiet, small but powerful. Not anger, not sadness. Something steadier. Resolve. because in the seconds after Ariana's words echoed through the backyard, I noticed something no one else seemed to see. Grandma Evelyn, sitting in her wicker chair, had stopped smiling. Her hand rested beside her untouched glass. Her gaze was fixed on Ariana, not with pride, but with an expression I hadn't seen since childhood, a warning. And in that moment, for the first time all evening, I felt the string inside me loosen, not because I was breaking, but because someone else had finally reached their limit first. For a moment, no one moved. The backyard hung in a strange kind of silence, the kind where even the night insects seemed to pause waiting. The candles on Grandma's cake flickered against the soft breeze, and every pair of eyes at the table bounced between me and Ariana, hungry for whatever reaction they assumed I'd finally break into. But I didn't move. I didn't give them the scene they wanted. Instead, the first sound that cut through the air was the slow scrape of wood against stone. Grandma Evelyn pushed back her chair, not abruptly, not shakily, deliberately, like a judge rising to deliver a verdict. She smoothed the blanket across her lap, touched the pearl pendant at her throat, and only then looked toward Ariana. The tension snapped like a taut thread. Ariana blinked, confused for half a second, then flashed a smile, bright, eager, desperate to pretend she still controlled the moment. "Grandma," she said, stepping closer, "I wasn't finished yet. I just thought, before your announcement." Grandma lifted one hand. Ariana's voice died. The entire table stilled. When Grandma spoke, her voice wasn't loud, but it carried in a way that settled over everyone, firm and unshakable. "Ariana," she said, "sit down." A chorus of startled glances darted across the table. Grandma had never used that tone with Ariana in her entire life. My sister laughed lightly, fake nervous. "Grandma, I was just—" "Sit," Grandma repeated down. The second command landed like a stone tossed into a still pond. A few cousins exchanged looks. Mom lowered her glass, Dad straightened in his seat, and Ariana, my polished, perfect sister, hesitated long enough for panic to flicker across her face. She sat. Grandma's eyes swept across the table until they found me. Something eased in her expression, then hardened again as she straightened her spine. "I've heard enough tonight," she said, "and more than enough over the last few years." Her gaze returned to Ariana. "And I will not allow cruelty to be passed off as confidence." Mom opened her mouth. "Mother, that's not what this is." Grandma cut her off with a sharp glance. "Jennifer, stop protecting what you refuse to correct." Mom froze, lips parted, stunned into silence. Dad looked like he wanted to shrink into his chair. Grandma's hand closed gently around the back of her chair, and she took in the entire table of relatives, her voice steady and cold. "Before this evening goes any further, I have something to say, and I expect every person here to hear it clearly." No one breathed. Even the caterers behind the tent stopped moving. Grandma cleared her throat, and with the same measured calm she used to walk into boardrooms decades ago, she delivered the sentence that detonated the entire night. "As of yesterday afternoon, the controlling interest of the Harper family business belongs to Lillian." The world seemed to tilt. My wine glass wobbled slightly in my hand. Someone at the far end of the table gasped. Another dropped a fork onto their plate with a sharp clatter. One of my uncles muttered something under his breath like a stunned prayer. But it was Ariana's reaction I'll remember forever. Her face, already tight with strain, drained of every trace of color. She looked like the breath had been punched clean out of her. "What?" she whispered. Grandma didn't blink. "You heard me." Ariana shook her head, fast, frantic. "No, that's not possible." "You told me I told you," Grandma interrupted. "That legacy is earned, not handed to the loudest child." Dad pushed back his chair abruptly. "Mother, be reasonable. Ariana has been performing." Grandma snapped. "And the two are not the same." Mom rose to her feet, face flushed with disbelief. "This can't be legal. You can't just—" "It is legal," Grandma said calmly. "The documents are signed, filed, final." She turned to the group. "The transfer is irrevocable." Every word landed like a hammer. Ariana gripped the edge of the table. No, this isn't what announcement were you even planning to make. That's what you wanted tonight to be. You said I planned. Grandma said to celebrate my 8 decades of life with the people I love. But then you created a moment of such profound humiliation for your sister that it made my decision clearer than ever." Ariana stared at her eyes, filling with fear, the first real fear I'd ever seen on her. "This isn't fair," she whispered. "Fair," Grandma repeated, "is not the word I'd use to describe how your sister has been treated for the last 30 years. Haley, sitting across from me, exhaled softly, one of those stunned, shaky exhales that say finally without speaking. Grandma wasn't finished. In addition to the business, she continued, the Raleigh house, the lake house, and the beach condo have also been transferred to Lillian. Mom's jaw dropped. Dad's knuckles turned white on the table edge. Ariana let out a sound halfway between a choke and a cry. "You gave her everything," Ariana demanded, voice climbing in pitch. "Everything." Grandma looked at her without sympathy. "Everything you assumed would be yours because you were treated as untouchable." Ariana pushed to her feet. "I worked for this family. I've put in years. Showing up to take photos is not the same as working." Grandma said, "Your cousin Haley has done more meaningful labor in a single internship than you have in your entire tenure." Haley's eyes widened. She hadn't expected to be called out either. Grandma continued, unwavering. "And as of this week, your father and mother are removed from the advisory board." Mom's hand flew to her chest. Dad sputtered. "You can't." "I can," she said. "And I have." Ariana sank back into her chair, shaking. For the first time, she looked small, really small. The relatives sat there in stunned silence, unsure where to look, unsure what side to take. Everything they'd believed about the Harper family hierarchy had just been crushed beneath Grandma's calm, decisive voice. Then Grandma turned toward me, and her voice softened in a way that made my throat ache. "Lillian," she said, "you are the only one who has ever valued what this family was built on: work integrity, discipline. You never demanded attention or assumed power. You earned it, quietly, consistently." I swallowed hard. She stepped closer, resting a hand on the back of my chair. "You deserve the seat everyone else tried to deny you." Ariana let out a quiet, broken sob. Mom whispered, "This will tear the family apart." "No," Grandma said. "Cruelty already did that. Tonight simply reveals it." She straightened again, the authority of decades settling back over her. "The future of this family," she said, "is no longer in the hands of entitlement." Ariana whispered my name like a plea. "Lillian, you can't let this happen. Say something. Tell her she's wrong." I looked at her, really looked at her. For the first time, I didn't see the golden child or the impossible standard I'd been measured against. I saw the truth, an adult who had coasted on praise so long she believed she was owed the world. "I'm not the one who created this moment," I said quietly. "You did." Her face crumpled. Grandma nodded once firmly, and the weight of her decision settled over the entire backyard like a final verdict. "That will be all," she said. "Now let's finish the cake." But the party was already over. At least for Ariana it was. 6 months later, the dust didn't just settle, it rearranged everything. The Monday after the party, I walked into the headquarters with the same quiet confidence I'd carried my whole life, only now people actually saw it. The board welcomed me without hesitation. By the end of the week, Ariana's office was cleared out. By the end of the month, her name disappeared from internal reports altogether. Relatives who once praised her fell silent, unsure how to rewrite their memories. She tried finding work in the same industry, but reputations in this town travel faster than resumes. Doors closed gently, then firmly. The spotlight she'd lived in her entire life blinked out all at once. Mom and Dad faced the consequences of being removed from the advisory board. Financial strain, social fallout, the uncomfortable realization that their legacy wasn't as unshakable as they'd believed. Their calls to me shifted from indignation to guilt to quiet pleading. I didn't block them, but I didn't bend either. Grandma moved into my condo in Charlotte soon after. She wakes early, reads on the balcony, and beats me at cards just like she used to. Our home is calm, no performance, no hierarchy, just truth. For the first time, I am living a life that feels entirely mine. Some people say family is forever, but I've learned that only the parts built on respect truly last. I spent years shrinking myself to keep the peace, years believing silence was the safest place to stand. But standing up for my own worth didn't break this family. It revealed what was already broken. Now, the legacy I carry isn't about property or titles. It's about finally breathing without permission, finally taking up the space I earned, and finally understanding that blood means nothing without dignity. And if you've ever been the overlooked one, the quiet one, the forgotten one in your own family, trust me, you're not alone. Tell me where you're watching from and share your story below. And if this one resonated, make sure you subscribe for the next chapter.